Hello there, everyone, and welcome back to Canine Cannibalism. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the Amazonian Uterobscis Outbreak. Now, this video is really not going to make any sense if you haven't seen my video on the Amazonian Uterobscis and my video on the Yoni flower. At this point, you could probably get by without watching my video on Lizzie's flower glizzy, but I would recommend either watching those two videos that I just mentioned or reading those books, if you prefer to do that, or if you've already read those books, and this video is going to make perfect sense to you, probably. This book is broken up into. This book is 316 pages, broken up into 27 chapters. I will give you a quick blurb. This book follows Lena from the first book, and she is currently in a race against the clock to try to stop the imminent outbreak of Amazonian Uterobscis that she started, mostly inadvertently, but we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. If you are unfamiliar with my videos, I do a few things in these review videos. I give you a content sample, which is kind of a trigger warning, but a little bit more robust and just includes all sorts of things that you can expect in the book. I give you a general review, and I usually give you some scenes or excerpts. There's not really any for this book, but that usually is a thing that I do. And then also, plot summary. So if all that sounds interesting to you, or if parts of that sound interesting to you, you're always welcome to skip around. That's why I spend time doing the timestamps. We're going to jump into it. So, content sample. If you were, well, that probably sounded like shit. My pen cap just fell over. If you were to pick up a copy of the Amazonian Uterobscis Outbreak and read it, you would find the following: gore and death. Now, you may notice this is the first book in this series that actually has gore in it, so woo! And then also general filth, including the ingestion of vaginal discharge and a couple of scenes that are in no way sexually appealing, or at least to me. And then there's some bug stuff, including formicophilic acts. So, like with the previous entries, very, very short content sample, not a lot of gross out weird shit, but not necessarily a bad thing. No, not necessarily a good thing either, but it's just the facts. So, we're going to jump into a general review now. I imagine this is probably going to be the shortest video in the series, because despite how much I liked this book, I don't really have a lot to say about it. Mostly because in the past books, I was complaining a lot, because it's a lot easier to pick out things that are kind of shitty than to pick out things that are... Sorry, my camera was all fucky-wucky. Pick out things that are decent, if that makes sense, but I try my best to do both. So let's start off with one thing that I noticed. The book has a page of recap. I don't really know how I feel about that, if I'm honest. I get the purpose. I think the first book was released in 2022. This book was released last year, late last year, September or something. So I get the purpose. If somebody hasn't picked up that book in a while, you need a recap. I don't fully like the way that it was done, because it was literally just a list, pretty much, of the events that happened in the first book. I feel that could have been a little better, but, that's just something that stood out to me. This book is so much fucking better than its predecessors, it's not even funny. The author took 3 years in between writing the last book. It's leagues better. I was actually interested in the story this time. I found the character dynamics slightly interesting. I did somewhat in Lizzie's Flower Glizzy. I still am never going to get over saying that title in an unironic manner. I did somewhat enjoy the character dynamics of the four friends in the Lizzie's Flower Glizzy book. I didn't really mention that because it wasn't really a big deal to me, but in this one I do sort of enjoy the character dynamics somewhat, especially between Lena and her friend and Cody. Found that to be interesting somewhat. I found the story to be interesting. All of the science-y bullshit, the sci-fi stuff is very robust in this one. It's not 20,000 Leagues robust to where it's just, what the fuck are you doing? But it's sci-fi. They go in depth with the science of the creatures. I find that to be very, very interesting. I liked this one. I will say that I liked this one. This is my favorite in the series by far, not even close. I can't really recommend this one more than the others because you won't fucking understand this book if you haven't read at least the first two. But if you like this one as much as I do, you'd probably also like the yoni flower, and then I guess Amazonian Uterobscis would just be kind of like eating your vegetables to get you to your dessert. So this book, I like. I do like it. It was very good. Everything felt much better than the previous books. I'm not going to say it was very good. It's kind of a nothing compliments, especially considering that in certain aspects it wasn't much better. It wasn't very good, but it is much better than in totality than the previous books. And with that said, let's jump into the ratings. If you are unfamiliar with how the system works, I give ratings to certain aspects of the book, so things like plot development, character development, that kind of thing. With this first set of numbers, 5 is mediocre. So anything under 5 is approaching not very good territory. Anything above 5 is approaching a good territory. 5 is completely in the middle. Not good, not bad, just there. So for plot and plot direction, I gave this book a 6. I enjoyed the plot. I enjoyed the plot direction. I thought it was good. I thought the sci-fi aspects were very, very interesting. Or very interesting. Maybe not very, very interesting. For the tone, I gave that a 5. I'm pretty sure I've given almost every single one in this series, if not every single book in this series, a 5, because the tone is just kind of there, which isn't bad. It just is how it is. So it's not inappropriate. There's no inappropriate tone. There's no tonal whiplash. None of that. But there's nothing like super groundbreaking. It's just there. For characters and character development, I gave this one a 6. Again, we got characters that actually feel like people, not just the main character. I enjoyed that. And as I said, I enjoyed some of the character dynamics. Not like to an insane extent, but I did. I did enjoy some of the character dynamics. For grammar and typos, I would give this a 4. It is not a 5, but it is approaching a 5 rather quickly. I hope that the next book will be a 5 or even a 6. Maybe we'll have some insane grammar usage that just feels so right, you know? None of that in this book. There's still some typos, a lot fewer than in the previous books. A lot fewer, maybe like 4 or 5 total. But there's still some typos. There's still some interesting choices for grammar. But it's nothing like horrific. It's a 4. Dialogue, I give a 5. Completely fine. I don't personally fully like the style where the author writes out the noises that the characters are making. So trying to spell out moans constantly, or when somebody says fine like that, they spell out fine hyphen so fine. I don't fully think I like that style of dialogue writing, but I can't say it's a negative. It's just not a personal favorite of mine. But the dialogue felt fine in this one. Perfectly serviceable and fine. I would assume that there are going to be some people that disagree with me on that, but, personally, thought it was fine. Prose, which, if you don't know what prose is, and I'm probably just going to stop explaining this in every video because I think it's getting a little bit much, but prose is essentially anything that's not poetry. So the general structure and everything that the book is, because the book is not a poem. So literally the whole entire book, the words on the page. So when I rate this, I think structure of the sentences, structure of the paragraphs, the grammar, all of that. More so that there would be situations where, like, you could write a sentence like that, and the grammar is fine, but and the sentence makes sense, kind of. But I don't know why the fuck you would write a sentence like that. Like, it feels out of place. That kind of thing, if you get what I'm saying. Or a sentence that just feels so incredible, like McCarthy-esque. I'm going to be reviewing some McCarthy books coming up, and you'll see me gushing grannies about that kind of shit. So, in this book, it's a 5. Perfectly serviceable, no issues. I didn't find any issues with the sentence structure. I didn't find any like completely egregious constant uses of grammar that shouldn't be in there, in my opinion. Again, I didn't write the book, but grammar that took me out of it, structure that took me out of it, weird sentences that took me out of it. None of that. It's just perfectly serviceable. Personal enjoyment, I believe this is the first one that is over a 5. It's a 6. I'm 90% certain that is the highest out of all of the books I have given. I think I gave the Yoni flower a 4 or a 5, and that was the other highest. So I like this one. Like on a scale of like where 5 is just I didn't give a fuck, and like 10 is like, oh my god, it's incredible, and 0 is what the fuck are we doing here? It's a 6. I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it. It's 300 pages. I read it over the course of like 3 days because I just wanted to see what happened. It's pretty good, in my opinion. All right? It's nothing groundbreaking, but it is a story I've never read before, and by God, does it fill a part of me when I read it. Not in a weird way, or maybe in a weird way. Now, the next two numbers I'm going to give you are on a scale from 0 to 10, 0 being like a Magic Treehouse book, because these next two numbers are the disturbing factor and the gross out factor. For the disturbing factor, I gave this book a 3. It is more disturbing than the first book in the series, but it is still less disturbing than both the Yoni Flower and Lizzie's Flower Glizzy. There is death in this one, there is gore in this one, but it is not very disturbing. Gross out factor, I gave it a 3. Not the grossest thing out there. There's a couple of scenes. There's a lot more just actual sex in this one, without like insane descriptions of like worms fucking their way into men's urethras to lay eggs, which I don't even know if I touched on that in the last video, but that's how they spread. They fuck their way into urethras using their proboscis and lay eggs in the male urethra. So none of that really, but there's still some gross scenes, and there's still some gross sex scenes. So yeah, that's pretty much it for your ratings. We're gonna jump right into a plot summary now. Heavy spoiler warning, this is your chance to get out. As always, my plot summaries are not extremely robust and full of all sorts of minute details. This is just the major plot points. I reorganize certain details, either because I don't fully remember the order in which certain details happen, or because it's just simply easier for me to explain it that way. I purposefully leave out things. So if you were to go and read this book after I gave you a plot summary, you would still have a very, very different experience. And as always, I would recommend you go read the book, even if you watch this video, to form your own opinions. But with that said, we're going to jump into a plot summary. So this book picks up right at the end of the last book, with Lena rushing over to her friend Casey's house after realizing that Casey has a parasite, and that she, Lena herself, also has a new Uterobscis parasite that hatched from one of the eggs that she missed, I guess, that was in like her fallopian tube or whatever. Once there, she briefs Casey's boyfriend Cody on what is happening, because if you'll remember, Cody and Lena fucked when Lena was zombied out, and from the feel-good drugs that the Uterobscis pumps you full of. And she passed eggs to Cody, who then passed eggs to Casey. They come up with a plan to tell Casey that doesn't involve divulging that they fucked each other. Casey arrives. Lena gives her presentation. They perform a hysteroscopy. Probably should have looked up how to pronounce that word before this video. I looked at that word and I was like, oh yeah, I could pronounce that. Can't pronounce that. But where they shove a fucking tube up into your uterus to see what the fuck's going on. And they find out that Casey has 3, count them, 3 worms inside of her. Lena's friend and lab partner, Angela, is at Lena's house in order to feed her private stash of Uterobscis and to take care of her dog, because Lena was like, hey, I'm going out of town. You're the only one who knows about my private stash of Uterobscis. Can you help me out? Angela, who is a deviant, fulfills her fantasies of having a Uterobscis fuck its way into her. So she now has a Uterobscis. Over the next few days, Casey and Lena begin trying to track down the girls who were infected. Now, we're going to talk about Angela after I'm done doing the plot summary. She works at the lab with Lena. She knows that you can't remove a Uterobscis once it gets inside you. They've done all sorts of testing at this point, and they found that you can't cut a Uterobscis out of you. The only way to remove a Uterobscis is to perform a hysterectomy, or whatever the fuck it's called, where you cut out the uterus, because it roots itself into your uterus with its tail, and if you cut it off at the tail, the roots die inside of you and lead to necrotizing fasciitis. So you can't remove them. They have not found a way to detach the worms from inside of the uterus. Angela knows that they feed on their hosts and slowly suck them dry. And Angela knows from personally talking with Lena that the drugs that the Uterobscis has you on fuck up your brain chemistry for a while. she still decides to let it fuck its way up into her. And you will find, as I continue with this description, that Angela is a fucking bitch. She is a stupid bitch. I digress. Over the next few days, Casey and Lena begin trying to track down the girls who were infected through Lena's fucking before she realized she had eggs in her. They arrive at one girl's apartment and find her dead. 4 worms crawl out of her. She died of an overdose of the opioid-like chemicals that the Uterobscis pumps into its victims. So, essentially, if you have more than one worm, the chemicals slowly build up in your system and lead to what is essentially an opioid overdose. So, Angela and Lena, when discussing this, realize that the effects of the drugs that the Uterobscis pumps you full of always wane after they feed semen to the worms inside them. They posit that the creature is reinforcing behavior that feeds it by counteracting the horniness drug whenever it gets fed. In the lab, they manage to find the organ in the worm that stores the counteractive drug that they refer to then as anti-glycerin. They manage to extract some of this drug. They are able to synthesize patches that slowly release anti-glycerin into their systems. They also inject the stuff straight, as doing so creates a more potent and longer-lasting effect. Angela, later on, tries to let another worm fuck its way into her, but it gets stuck in her vagina because of the worm already present. Now, she knows from working in the lab, the reason she does this is because when a worm detects that another worm is in a host already, the worm outside of the host will attempt to just avoid it. Angela forces it into herself. But then it starts fighting with the other worm. And now when this happened in the lab, the worm that was not rooted in the uterus would eventually leave. In this instance, it seals itself inside her vagina. So she freaks the fuck out. Okay? She also knows now that if you have more than one worm, eventually, as they get bigger and produce more of their opioid-like agents that make you high and horny, it will eventually kill you. Now, they do have the anti-glycerin at this point, but if you were to miss a dose when the worms are at their max size and producing as much of the chemicals as they can, you die. But she lets it fuck its way into her, knowing very well that there's a chance that it would get past the other worm and root itself in her uterus. And she goes to her family's house for her sister's graduation, and in the middle of the night, while sleeping next to her sister, knowing that there is a Uterobscis rooted inside of her vagina that will most likely eventually come out, guess what the fuck happens? It goes out of her and into her sister. Lena accidentally tells Casey that Cody fucked her. Casey blows up and cuts off both Cody and Lena from her life. Cody and Lena then very shortly after get together. A video goes viral where a teenage girl in a Target births hundreds of baby worms like Lena did the previous year. Lena finds that she has worms around the same time, and then a few weeks later, or whatever, however long later, she births the babies again, in a bathtub this time, so she manages to catch them all. Angela, around the same time, after having confirmed that she also has eggs inside of her, goes to a concert. Even though she knows that Lena just recently gave birth, she then gives birth to hundreds of baby larvae in the crowded concert venue, infecting hundreds of girls because she couldn't just not go to the concert. Sometime after, Casey ODs and the doctors call Cody and Lena. As the doctors perform an emergency hysterectomy, the worms crawl out of the removed uterus and attack 2 of the female nurses and the female surgeon. The uterus then births all of the babies. Casey ends up in a coma due to the complications of the surgery. More videos begin to pop up as time goes on of births of hatchlings, and then shortly after, the story about the Uterobscis and what it does to women and how it spreads and everything, it goes public on like CNN and international news and everything. Shortly after, Lena gets a call from Allie and Priya of the Yoni Flower fame. They explain their situation, at least in a rough manner. They ask for Lena's help, believing that the special properties of the Uterobscis slime that prevents STDs from being spread might help them stop the disease that turns men into podlings. They also think that the yoni flower stage might be helpful in luring the Uterobscis out of women, as it very closely resembles a vagina. The sap that it leaks is extremely addictive to every animal they've tested it on, and it actually is like made of meat, essentially. Lena and Angela then book flights to go meet Allie and Priya, and the book ends. Let's talk about Angela for a second. This isn't like a review thing, but just how unlikable of a character. Now, all of these characters have flaws in all of these books, right? Lena, least of all, for the most part, okay? She refused to get a hysterectomy when she should have at the beginning of the first book, to save other people from what she was going through. But she didn't know that it was laying eggs. She didn't know it was passing eggs. It makes you zombie fuck people. You can't control yourself. But she still didn't let people know what was happening out of fear of what would happen to her. So she still has some flaws, okay? Allie, more so, okay? Allie has some issues. Allie got a flower inside of her, a flower that doesn't really make you high or horny, not even remotely close to how the Uterobscis does, and she still decided to fuck a guy right after it got inside of her without even remotely knowing what the flower would do to the guy. And thus she led to her own outbreak of the disease that the fucking yoni flower causes. Okay? So Allie is a worse person. All right? Lizzie is just stupid. All right? Lizzie's just a stupid 18-year-old. Lizzie fucked a flower, brought her friends over without knowing how the flower would really react, and let them all fuck it together. And then she reaped what she sowed, all right? She got sick, everyone else got sick, and then she continued to help spread the disease. Okay? Angela knows about all of the horrid shit that a Uterobscis can do to you. Still lets one fuck its way into her. Knows of all the horrible shit that two Uterobscis can do to you. Still tries to let a second one fuck its way into her. Knows that she has a Uterobscis inside of her that will at some point leave her. Goes over to her family's house because she doesn't want to miss her sister's graduation. Like, there are all of the characters justify their bad decisions by saying things like, I didn't want to miss a concert, I didn't want to miss my sister's graduation, that kind of shit. Like, there are more important things, like not spreading a fucking killer worm to other women. So she sleeps next to her sister, she passes her sister a worm. Her sister runs out of anti-glycerin while in Europe and begins spreading eggs to men. So her sister's kind of a yeah. Angela knows that she will be hatching eggs soon and decides that it's worth it to go to the concert that she wants to go to, where she then infects hundreds of women and is still more worried about being embarrassed. That's pretty much where I'm going to leave you, I think. If you like this video, like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell. I release videos every Friday. So, if you are into these kind of reviews, the next book that I'm going to be reviewing is Darkness on the Edge of Town by Brian Keene. I haven't started it yet, but I'm looking forward to. As always, my opinions are my opinions and my opinions alone. I would highly recommend that you pick up a copy of this book and read it for yourself. I did really like this book. Not really like this book, but I did really like the book, okay? It was interesting. It was much better than the previous ones. I would recommend it. So pick it up, buy it, whatever form you can. I'm pretty sure it's like extremely cheap in ebook formats. Always good to support the authors 99% of the time. And yeah, that's pretty much it. See ya.